Howdy. My name's Brandon. That's how it happens in life. When no one needs you, and if you get a little light, get attention from people, so many well wishes are planned at once. I'm going to tell you a story about my father's. Yes, I have them. As it turned out, as many as 10 people. How did it all start? I'll tell you more now. In the meantime, put likes, write comments under the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I have a mother and a stepfather, Josh. That's his name. He's been with us almost from the beginning. My biological father left my mother almost as soon as he found out she was pregnant. My mother was in a desperate situation. She almost died of exhaustion, and Josh, it was he who noticed her, took her to the hospital, and paid for treatment, childbirth, and then began to care for my mother. She rejected him for a long time, confident that he would not accept her with a child. But my stepfather proved that he loved her sincerely and wanted to be close to her. Over the years, they got married, and I grew up knowing that he wasn't my real dad. Josh always helped me with everything, and it was he who gave me the math courses that I enjoyed. I had a love and passion for science, and he believed me. Josh wanted to give me an education that neither he nor my mother had, and I was grateful for that. And one day, I heard there'd be a competition among young mathematicians. The prize fund was about $100,000, but the entry fee was $3,000. It was a lot of money. I'd have liked to try my luck, but we didn't have that kind of money, plus the cost of getting on a plane, staying in a hotel, and even $1,000. Just heard about the competition and he hugged me and asked me if I wanted to go there. I said yes, but then he interrupted me. He went somewhere, came back a few hours later. Josh put the money on the table and told me to go there with my mom. He sold his only car that he'd used to drive to work. My mother started crying and said she was grateful to him for that. You just have to win. I believe in you, he said. We went with my mother to another city in a couple of days. The competition was held in several stages, but it was easy for me. I was winning. After 3 days, the final stage was to take place, where I had to sweat, as it should, a couple of times, even though that I'd already finished, but still won. Yes, I won the $1 million. I'll not tell you how much my mother and I were happy, how happy we were, and how proud my mother was of me. We were attacked by journalists, interviewed, took photos. The news instantly spread around the city. I came home a winner. We planned to use the money to buy our own house and a car for our stepfather, but I could withdraw the account only after 6 months. Those are the rules. We got home, Josh had dinner, and he made me a toast about how proud he was of me because I was his son. That was nice. Then someone rang the doorbell, and when I opened it, there was a man standing in the doorway. He came to our house, and my mother found out. Who do you want? She asked dryly. He said that he'd heard about his son and decided to congratulate him. You're not getting anything. Get out, she said. But he was insistent. Josh threatened him with his fists, and then he left. I asked who it was, but my mother said it was a bad person. I heard you won, so I came, he added. But as soon as the door closed, we got another call. Only now there was another guy standing outside with a cake in his hands. He began by saying that he missed his son. What's the matter with your son? Are you going crazy or something? My mother shouted and chased him away. Josh was angry. They sent me to bed, and my mother said that all these men were old acquaintances of hers. When my father left her, she didn't know where to go, so she often asked for help from friends, sometimes food, and then money to borrow, then to spend the night because she couldn't afford to rent a house. And now they all came to us and say that since they once helped, they have the right to call themselves fathers. Every day, someone came to us, even my mother's classmates among them. He didn't really know anything except the winnings and tried to drive up to my mother. Josh chased everyone away. There were 9 of them in total. Can you imagine? 9 people in a week. And then came the 10th. And this time, when my mother opened the door, she froze. My own father, or rather my biological father, was standing there. He looked at her, handed her the flowers, and glanced in my direction. He said, "Hello, son," and went into the house. My mother began to feel a little shaky. She felt bad, and he came up to me and tried to hug me. Josh wasn't home at the time, so I told him to get lost. But he said I was his son, so he had a right to be around. My mother also yelled at him, but he said that if we wanted him to leave, he'd have to give him half, and then threatened to have connections in court that otherwise would take half in a bad way. My mom started crying a lot. It wasn't fair. I said I wouldn't give him anything. Who are you anyway? You show up after all these years and demand money? We can sue you for being missing, and we can also force you to pay child support, I shouted. My father was scared, turned pale, said he was joking, just wanted to check on me. He started to leave, and I opened the door wide. It's a good thing I left you with that child back then. You were a problem, and you still are, he said sarcastically. It was terribly unpleasant, and I felt uneasy after his words. At this moment, the stepfather's voice sounded. Not for me, he said, and hit father right in the face. He fell to the ground and promised to return with the police, and he came. He said that my stepfather attacked him, and he's now demanding compensation of $500,000. My mother was upset, but stepfather was silent. He said that if we don't pay, he'll sue us, and I agreed. I told him I'd give him the money to keep him away. My father smiled and took the statement from the police. Josh tried to stop me, but I said I couldn't help it. You're my dad. I'll definitely win again, I said, and went to my father. I asked him where I'd been and why he had left my mother. He said that my mother became a burden, and that he never wanted to have children and live perfectly. Casinos, girls, drinks. Do you think I still need a family? No. Give me the money and I'll be lost. And when it's over, I'll come again. I said, I warned him that I was now extorting money, but he again boasted of his connections in court and held out his hand. So I took out my phone and called the police. Here, a strange man is extorting money. I'm a child. I'm not even 18 yet. Come on, I said and hung up. My father was taken aback, and I took my phone out of my pocket with the recorder on and thanked him for his long tongue. He didn't have time to escape. The police just arrived and they arrested him. And of course, he had no connections. That's what the thought of freebies does to people. As for us, we bought an apartment, a car, and I'm preparing for the next competition for another million.
Hello everyone, my name is Carl. I am a full 15 years old. My father is the president of a very large company in the United States. Our family is billionaires, but I work as a waiter. Do you want to know why? Now I'll tell you everything, and while you listen, watch and do not forget to immediately subscribe to this channel. Let's start with the fact that when I was born, we were poor. Yes, it is hard to believe. Now it is customary to think that if you are poor, you will never achieve anything. But my father is the best example of what it is possible to earn yourself, and he did it. When he and my mother got married, they had nothing. No place to live, no car. And the day came when it was necessary to pay the bills, including paying for the apartment. There was nothing. My mother had a little me. She could not go to work. Then my father, desperate, went out on the street and just went to shops and cafes, offering the services of a cleaner, a salesman, yes, anyone. He did not disdain work, and his mother respected him for it. That day he came back late at night, but managed to earn money, and although Dad was terribly tired, he always found time to play with me. So they lived for several years, until one day, Dad came as a cleaner in a large company. He was mopping the floors after the directors' meeting. One of the men kicked Dad's mop and called him a laborer. My father was a proud man, but with a brain. He could have hit him hard, but he knew he had a family to feed, so he straightened up and said something to the man that the others didn't even comment on. Dad told that man that the project they were working on would fail just because its concept was built wrong. They were going to build houses for the poor and sell them. Dad himself lived in such conditions and knew perfectly well what amenities were really needed. The guy just laughed and said he wasn't going to listen to the janitor's opinion. The idea of the project is beautiful, Gillies, that it is led by a person who does not understand and is not educated, my father said. He turned on Dad. He was hurt in front of his supervisor, and that offended him the most. Then the most important director intervened. He reassured his subordinate, then turned to his father. He asked him a couple of questions, and Dad answered. He just said his opinion and gave a couple of free tips. The director asked why my father worked as a cleaner if he was good at business. Then Dad said that a real businessman does not disdain any dirty work. It's hard to believe, but my father was put on probation after the dialogue. That subordinate was angry. He was furious. The very next day, my father came to train. He immediately showed himself. The internship lasted 3 long months, but it was paid. This money was enough for a living. After a while, Dad was hired for a long and hard work. It was a holiday for our family. Over the years, my father rose higher and higher. I grew up, we already bought our own house, 2 cars, and my mother gave birth to another daughter, my sister. And then we just got rich, until my father started running the company himself, which he came to as a cleaner. Despite the money, connections, and position, Mariana and I, my little sister, were brought up simply, without being tied to money. If you need money, go to work, Dad would say. Of course, we didn't need anything. We ate, we went to great schools, we had everything. But if I needed my own money, my father sent me to work. So in the summer, I worked part-time with neighbors, and then with this money, my friends and I went camping or went to parties. It didn't bother me that I was working. However, many people around were outraged and considered my father's upbringing ruthless. He asked them to mind their own business. I didn't like working at first. At first, I just wanted to ask my mother for money. She gave it to me secretly until my father noticed. He strictly forbade spoiling Mariana and me, and my little sister was offended with my father, and so was I. And once he came home earlier than usual, he sat me down at the table and said that there was an important conversation. Dad then explained that he could no longer support us and that everything we had would have to be sold. My mother almost had a heart attack. She was very worried and only asked what to do now. My father replied that now it was time for me to help him. I also had to earn money. That day I could hardly sleep because I could not believe that we were now poor. I suddenly remembered again that feeling when every cent counts, when it is necessary to save everything, wait for wages, and sometimes go to bed hungry. I felt sick. I saw my mother's condition and felt sorry for her. And now we had Mariana, who had never understood what it meant to sleep on the floor in cheap apartments. I pulled myself together and made a plan of action. I understood that since I was a man, I had to take care of my family. My father did everything he could. I came to school, sat out classes, and then quickly ran to a cafe near the house and got a part-time job there. The receptionist was surprised. He didn't understand why I was working. I didn't want to explain for a long time. I just said that we needed money. He accepted me with no work experience and started the same day. It was hard. That night I came home exhausted, tired, and hungry. I ate quickly, did my homework, and went to bed. The next day, I was back at work after school. So 2 months have passed. I gave my entire salary to my parents and kept a small part for myself. My father and mother were proud of me, and I knew I was doing the right thing. Christmas was coming. I studied well, and so I finished my studies before the winter break with good results. Christmas morning began with unexpected surprises. Mom and Dad came into my room and handed me a gift box. There were car keys. I did not immediately understand what this means, and Dad said, "You deserve a gift. Now I see that you are my son and a worthy man." I didn't know what was going on. Then my parents took me outside, where a car was waiting for me. In all the excitement, I almost choked. I bombarded my parents with questions about where the money came from, and when we went home, Dad admitted that he had invented the bankruptcy situation. I wondered why, and then my father said his favorite phrase: "A real businessman does not disdain dirty work." At that moment, I was filled with a sense of joy and pride in myself at the same time. I didn't let the family down. It was important. I accepted the gift, and my father said that I could quit my job for the duration of my studies. But I was so used to making money that I said I'd work for a while. Another year has passed since then. I still work in that cafe as a waiter, and I like my job. People around me no longer laugh at me. They show respect. Now I go to work by car, and I divide my salary for the needs of my home and family. I think I'm doing everything right. What do you think? Write your opinion in the comments, and do not forget to put likes.